Leithel, you're here. Welcome to episode 3 of The False Face, a series of conversations with artists that I admire. And you find me sat this morning here in Combat Corner because my guest this week is none other than Dan Forden, the legendary sound designer and composer for the Mortal Kombat games, going right the way back to Mortal Kombat in 1992. One of my heroes as a music listener, probably my favorite composer of all time across any genre of music. I absolutely love Dan's music to pieces, and I expect you might do as well if you're here. And while you're here, if you don't mind me asking, if you like the video, click the button that says like and consider subscribing to the channel. We like a deep dive here on The False Face, and you can look forward to more of those. Dan has agreed to come back on the show for another project that I've got cooking up but not finalized yet. But if you like this, there's going to be more of it. And similarly, you can check out some of my other videos with musicians. I've got a couple of chats with drummers up, and I think it'll be worth your while. If you've been here before and you're back, it's a stone cold gas to have you. I am so appreciative of anybody that chooses to spend any of their free time with me. And I know why you're here. I don't want to keep you much longer. I just want to say that the show, as always, is sponsored by James Neeson's Mental Health for Metalheads, which, through the magic of video editing, I will get up on the screen right now. And that's it for the introduction. So come here! And please, I hope you enjoy The False Face in conversation with Dan Forden. See ya! Dan, you just told me you're a Prog fan. I knew that from watching bits and pieces of, interviews with you before. And I just wanted to ask you, have you any thoughts on Engine de Poitrine, which kind of blew up on YouTube a couple of months ago and is very, very interesting and appealing music. And I just wanted to know, was that something that had come your way?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting and just out of left field. And who came up with that? I mean, it's not just the music that they're playing, but their presentation, I think, is at least 50% of it.
Yeah.
These just ridiculous costumes and playing kind of just ridiculous music. Like, who's doing microtonal music? I mean, it didn't even like click with me when I was texting with a friend. He's like, "Yeah, the microtonal guitar." I'm like, "Really?" And then I'm like, yeah, it's like no wonder it sounds kind of sour and kind of off, but
Yeah.
awesome at the same time.
It's very interesting that you said that about the idea of picking up on something in the music and then having it confirmed that the reason that it sounded the way that it does was because they were using microtonal guitars. Because I have something, and we'll get to this later in the chat, that I wanted to ask you about why your music sounds the way that it does. But you've kind of almost preempted that in a way that's pretty interesting. But Dan, I told you a couple of minutes ago that I was pretty nervous about talking to you, and I haven't done this for any of my other conversations that I've put here on YouTube yet, but I've sort of written a little bit of an introduction because this is kind of a big deal for me, that you've agreed to speak to me. And how I wanted to set this up was essentially that I was and am rubbish at Mortal Kombat. I could finish the first game so long as there was a jump glitch that you could exploit to get past Goro, and I could finish the second one so long as Melina appeared within the first 4 fights, and if she appeared anytime after that, I was doomed. I could finish Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 if I played as Noob Saibot, and I threw that projectile that made the other person's intangible, so their attacks didn't connect. And that was it. But for me, Mortal Kombat was never about skill or competition or progression or achievement. It was a world. It was a place I could go to, essentially. The hours that I spent with those games were an excuse to spend time in a world that, for the most part, was drawn by Tony Goski and scored by Dan Forden. And I fell away from and came back to the games a couple of times over the years, but never stopped listening to your music. And in some ways, I think it soundtracked my life as a music fan and someone who came of age when the industry moved away from physical releases and then back that way again. Because I remember the first time I realized that Mortal Kombat Trilogy would play on a CD player, and I was like, it can't be as easy as this. I can finally just play this music as music, and I don't have to get my ass kicked by Johnny Cage, to get to whatever level. And then that moved into the early days of, I have to confess to piracy here, but I was downloading MP3s of some of the voice clips whenever that became a thing on the internet, and then right back to these beautiful Enjoy the Ride records editions of the albums and vinyl,
Right.
which sound fantastic. So that kind of traces the last maybe 15-20 years of the music industry too, I think. So that's a very, very long way of saying that I love Mortal Kombat, but I'm less of a Mortal Kombat fan than a Dan Forden fan, and I'm very, very grateful for your time, and it's very generous for someone whose channel is still brand new, and I just really appreciate it. So I want to get that out of the way up front, say thank you very much for being here. It's really, really cool.
Sure.
Something else that I wanted to kind of run past you as a sort of primer too was I watched the all the documentary footage on the Legacy collection that came out
Mhm.
last year, and you were quoted as saying about one of the early pieces of music. The quote is, "You described it as a melody in the diminished scale that's harmonized at the fifth." And
Mhm.
that was that. This is why I said to you earlier on that I'm out of my depth speaking with a composer, because that to me is another language. And I wondered if, first of all, do you recall if you were talking about a particular piece of music when you said that, or was that
Yeah.
is that yeah? What which one was that?
Well, the first one was I think it's called The Courtyard. It's basically the first tune that I wrote for Mortal Kombat when Ed, after Ed and John approached me and said, "Do you want to work on this new game we're thinking about?"
Hmm.
And I was like, "Of course," because I'd already worked with Ed, and I was like, "Yeah, it's just Ed. If Ed likes working with me, I'm going to work with and for him because um, no one knew how successful Mortal Kombat was going to be, but I already knew that Ed was someone um, whose team I wanted to be on. So that was just fortunate for me that he and John wanted to work with me. So the first tune, basically, it's like it's got the doom 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 doom, that bass line,
Uh huh.
which kind of has become the motive, or at least in my mind, sort of the theme, one of the themes of Mortal Kombat.
Hmm.
And there's a melody over that goes over that, which basically uses a diminished scale. And the diminished scale or octatonic scale is basically half step, whole step alternated.
Okay.
So it does it in ways outlines a diminished chord, which is a particular kind of tonality. And then harmonizing that at the fifth is a thing that I heard from King Crimson. It's like that's a really cool sound. So I've actually used that in a few tunes, that and maybe I don't know. I feel like maybe the subway had that vibe. I don't know. I feel like I've used it more than once. I've,
Okay. So I can just about follow that, but I'm in heaven listening to you talk about it. I don't know what it is. I love talking about people. I love listening to people talk music theory, but hopefully if anybody's watching this, there will be people who understand that more than I do. I am a facilitator in that
Mhm.
regard. But speaking of King Crimson, even if we just take it back a little bit before you get involved with Mortal Kombat, I was hoping you could clear something up for me because there's slightly conflicting information on the internet about this.
Mhm.
Um, can you confirm which albums that you played on with Cheer Accident?
I think so. I think I'm on Enduring the American Dream. I think I'm on a couple tunes there.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple tunes on the Y album. The
Mm-hmm.
entire Not a Food album.
Okay.
And there might, because like they're always recording and like putting stuff together and then like, oh, for this album we're gonna do this thing. So like my stuff might the stuff that I was with them for 2 years. So the stuff that I'm on is like a couple, spreads over a couple albums of that time period.
That makes sense, yeah, because Enduring the American Dream came out something like 1997, but you were long gone by that stage.
Yeah.
Um, and the credits on Discogs, I think that's what it says that you had played on. That's interesting to hear that you played on all of Not a Food, because I've been listening to those albums this week,
Hmm.
and Not a Food is gnarly. There's no better word for it. It's so heavy, and you talk about like being a King Crimson fan. That album's
Hmm.
like a love letter to King Crimson. You know, it is so
Hmm.
interesting. Your work with, was it, did Tim Jones play drums on that album as well? Then was he the
He's
drummer for the
played
band?
drums on every
He
album.
I he so
He's
he is the drummer.
it's Tim and Jeff. Jeff
Yeah,
Lieberscher and Tim were basically Cheer Accident.
yeah,
At least through, they've been the two constants throughout the whole thing. Tim pretty much runs that show.
yeah.
And now it's like a no net. I mean, there's like a ton of people now. It's a Cheer Accident orchestra now.
I
Their
get it.
shows are very rich. Like a lot of different stuff. It's weird music. It's not stuff that most people are going to want to hear.
Hmm.
But for people that like adventurous music, I feel like anyone that likes sort of somewhat off the beat track music is always going to come away with something from
Yeah.
a Cheer Accident show.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like something that'd be brilliant to witness live. Each of the three albums that you just mentioned, I listened to, and none of the three of them sound at all like the other threes. They all have completely different mood,
Hmm.
tonality, all of that stuff. When I first started with the Y album, it's very, very straightforward. But I remember at one stage thinking, someone in this band likes Gentle Giant, and then I started to feel at home with it because I was like, yes, I can speak that language. And then American Dream is, it's challenging. It's, there's so it's really, really long stretches that have no musicality in them at all, but
Hmm.
It's really really beautiful stuff. I really enjoy listening to those records. So I mean, so your first Mortal Kombat soundtrack is 1992. And you
Hmm.
said you were approached by Ed then that came to you and said you wanted to be involved. How many games had you done by that stage, Dan? You'd done a bunch of like pinball machines. Would that be right?
A lot of pinball. One of the first games I worked on right after I started was a pinball machine that Ed Boon was working on with Steve Ritchie,
Yeah.
Black Knight 2000. And that was a cool game to work on. Also, I had played the original Black Knight back in, junior high school at the arcade
Hmm.
um, near my house. And then it's kind of cool, like, not that I was like a pinhead or anything, but I liked playing pinball and I didn't look into who was making these things. I didn't even think about it. I just thought, oh, there's a cool game there, like the Black Knight original and also Flash, which was a really cool game. And I'm talking about mid 70s. It's like this is before they really had sound going on,
Hmm.
but they had figured out some stuff and they had done some really cool stuff with lighting and like very kind of primitive synth type sound effects that just sounded so good and powerful, like when you're playing and the way they choreographed with the lights. So Steve Ritchie did the Flash game, which had that impact on me, and also Black Knight, the original Black Knight, which had the magnets that save the ball if you have them lit. Um, so anyway, Steve and Ed were doing the sequel to Black Knight 2000, and Steve wanted me to write like the multi-ball tune. So he actually gave me a riff,
Yeah.
like a little chord progression. I'm like, okay, I can run with that. So I like took that and then turned it into like a rock and roll tune, and then I, basically composed like a Steve Vai type, shredding guitar type solo with like the synth sounds that we had. So
Yeah.
that was like the first, I think might have been the first tune I wrote for a game. Although Arch Rivals was the first video game that I did, not game I did all by myself, and I wrote the music for that as well as all the sounds and voices and all that.
In terms of pinball game music, I have no familiarity with pinball machines. I may never have played a pinball machine in my life, which maybe sounds maybe a little bit uncultured.
You
But
should give it a shot.
yeah, how much music is in a pinball game, pinball machine? You know.
Well, it depends. It's like you're talking about, late 80s, early 90s compared to, mid 90s. The technology changed, more memory was available. The rules in the games got more complicated, so you had more game situations, so you had more need for more tunes. So you
Hmm.
started like having like all this music in these games.
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify, but um, so before we went to a data compression system and we were basically using a synthesizer for all the music and sound effects, a synthesizer chip in the game, there wasn't a limit on audio data because all we were doing was like composing a score in an editor
Yeah.
and saying, play a note here, rest here, and then that's how you'd write all your music. So you're really just what you're really just saving is the instructions of what to do,
I get
right?
you.
You're
Yeah.
not actually, so audio data is expensive. Instructions to tell a thing that makes audio is very cheap memory wise. So that's how we did everything. So theoretically, you could have almost infinite amount of actual sound coming out because you're just limited by the text files basically of your code. After we went to the data compression system, now you really have to manage your audio memory pretty well.
Hmm.
And so even though even so, there were compositional techniques that you could use to kind of stretch out like a small piece of music where you go like play A, play B, and then play A again, and then play B, but then have a slightly different ending. So you can most music is created of little, like repeating little sections and then putting them together. So you can basically take advantage of that to create the perception of a tune that's a minute long out of maybe 30 seconds of material. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah, I get you.
So
Yeah.
that's what we did a lot of that just sort of by necessity because I got to write like 10 tunes. I got to figure out a way to fit them in, plus all the sound effects and all the speech. So yeah, we came up with little ways to do that. Um, but to answer the question, I mean, you might have 15 tunes in a game. Some of them might be 5 to 10 seconds long, just like a little loop. Some of them might
Okay.
be a half minute, maybe. Usually you wouldn't go much longer than that, just because you have information like, well, the average ball time is, 15 seconds or 25 seconds or something like that. So it's like, well, there's no point in writing music that's much longer than that.
Yeah.
Plus, you're changing the music all the time in the game, depending on the game state. So typically, tunes would be maybe, big tunes like the main play, multi-ball, big, big, big pieces in the game would be maybe 30 to 45 seconds long, probably. And you might have two or three of those, and then you might have a smattering of, things that are maybe 20 seconds long.
That'd be true of was it Super High Impact that you did the sound for as well?
That's a
Um,
little different just because well, no, it's not really different. That was the same system. So yeah, didn't have as much music necessarily because it's
yeah,
not, the
it does.
music
Yeah, it
was
doesn't support
more,
it.
yeah, I guess we didn't, we did have music during the gameplay.
There
So I
was
don't
music,
know.
but I see again. I'm out of my depth when it comes to American football too. But in terms of the way the plays work, you select an option and then
Hmm.
you tell your opponent that you predict toast, and
Right,
then
of course.
Um, but yeah, so the music starts and stops quite quickly. I think
Right.
even for arch rivals, that your total music isn't much more than about 5 or 6 minutes for that either.
No,
It's short, so
that was minimal.
yeah. So you jump ahead to Mortal Kombat, and something I've always been curious about was were you given free reign with the music, or were you given any kind of direction? I suppose Ed and John kind of would they be considered the directors of that game, even though there were only four of you guys working on it at the time, or how did that?
Yeah,
Was that just like did they just say do what you want?
kinda. I mean, there's a level of trust between us all that like, well, we kind of understand what we need to do. I mean, obviously there were a lot of conversations about which direction we wanted to go. And I think we definitely had a starting point was like kung fu movies,
Yeah,
you know, um, especially with sort of the way over the top impacts like kicks and punches and like you said sounds like a board hitting a wall,
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. So we totally went like right in that direction. And then as far as the music goes, I mean, it's not like I was a kung fu music fan or anything, but I had seen plenty of kung fu movies and got a sense of the vibe of the tone of that music. But we also wanted to make it very dark and serious and took I would say like sort of in hindsight like Oriental or Asian Gothic,
Yeah.
so I personally didn't want to like hit everyone over the head with like, oh, this is Chinese, Asian, Oriental music.
Hmm.
I want to have that feel, but I wanted the sort of the context of it to be like sort of heavy metal, EDM, dark synth stuff, and then also bolted on like sort of the sometimes orchestral sound that you would hear in the movies
Yeah.
and those Asian or Oriental or Eastern tonalities.
Yeah.
So it's like that's kind of like the basket of ideas that I was sort of in, I think. And that's always been, I would say, kind of a North Star for how we would approach the music for any Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, Asian Gothic is perfect. I mean, you couldn't have summed it up better in 2 words than that. But did that take research, Dan? I mean, is that something that you had to spend time? I suppose what I'm talking about is authenticity. Is that something that you were concerned with? Is making sure that it was true to the influences, even though you're
Not at
obviously
all.
no, not at all. Just
I
went to
just wanted to do something cool that
yeah,
had those elements and yeah, I probably didn't think too much about it. I used probably a detriment is like I just want to get to work and get something going. And then
yeah,
that's what drives me. And then I start building on that. I felt like I had enough sort of surface understanding of some of the tonality and just feeling of what we wanted to accomplish. So
hmm
I just kind of jumped in and started making stuff. And that's kind of how I've always done it, really.
Do you see yourself as a bass player primarily, or would you consider yourself a multi instrumentalist?
I'm trying to consider myself a guitarist now,
Okay, yeah,
actually. So I've been hitting that pretty hard for the last 6 years. Basically since like COVID times. Spent
Yeah.
a lot of time with the guitar. I mean, I still play bass. I get together with friends and play. Usually, I'm playing guitar, but we'll switch, and I'll play some bass too, and I love it. And I have one. Like I'll still play it and record with it, but I'm definitely right now currently focused on guitar and also like writing songs and making arrangements using that.
Well, that's something actually I was going to get to as well, and we could skip ahead to that a little bit. I've been listening to Warning
Sure.
Signs a lot, and that came out during, was it during? That
Thank
must have
you.
been during COVID. It's great. I really really like it.
It was
Um,
22. It
yeah,
came out in the end of 22.
and at 22, yeah. Are you thinking about? I mean, are you thinking about releasing anything else? You said you were writing. Is that with a goal to releasing something, or do you play live locally or anything like that?
Not yet. I mean, I have a long time ago, but
Yeah,
I want to get back into it, and I am just putting material together, playing with friends, um, just trying to do work, and then
yeah.
eventually figure out what to do with it. But yeah, the goal is to eventually like do a set, have a set, get some people to play with me, and do
Did
some
you
shows and go from there.
did you have much experience singing before Warning Signs? And that was your
Very
first,
little.
yeah. Because I really, really, I don't know quite how I would describe your vocals on that, but it called something to mind that I couldn't quite put into words. But I was like, I recognize that, I just don't know where I recognize it from. But it's very interesting and lyrically, it's terrific. Like,
Thank you. I don't have a lot of confidence in it. Sometimes I feel like I feel pretty good about it, but singing's pretty hard. It's hard to do well.
yeah,
And so I'm just continuing to work at it and trying to get better. Um, I'm happy to say there was only like two little parts in the whole in that in that EP that I used some sort of pitch correction on. So the
yeah.
rest of it was actually solid. So I was like, at least I could do that. So
It's
yeah, I'm continuing to work and try to get better at that.
it is very natural. At no stage did I think, yeah, he's cheating on that. And it's also really nicely like engineered and produced and everything, which I suppose we could expect because that's your background. But no, it's terrific. I just want to say congratulations again, and I would just really really like that EP.
Thank you.
Dan,
Appreciate it.
the reason that I mentioned the bass playing thing is because I think that so much of your early work with the Mortal Kombat soundtracks, not even the early work actually, this is right through to the 2000s era's console games as well, is if not defined by your bass playing is so prominent. And this description came to me. I was listening to one of the soundtracks while I was walking in the forest earlier, and your bass lines prowl those songs like a tiger. There's something about them that is careful and slouches and controls everything, even though the instrumentation on top of and underneath it can be much busier. But there's just something about the way that the bass is just taking its time, but it's not out of time. And I think it's unique to your music in terms of anything else that I've heard. But this morning was the first time that I thought about that in a way that I was like, I think I can tell him what I've been thinking all these years. It's the first time it came to me
Mhm.
in words. How did you compose? What do you start with? Do you start with bass? Do you start with a synth lead, drums? How do you, or even back then, I suppose specifically, how did you compose those tracks?
I think it often did start with the bass line. For definitely the first tune did. Prominent tunes of that first game. Yeah, I think for the most part the bass like was probably the first thing to happen, to put the foundation there. It would be that, but then sometimes it would always also be I think it's a Temple Mount, I don't know, Temple Mount, Temple Gate. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There's another tune,
Yeah,
and it starts out with these like big chords with flutes and stuff. And again, this is MK1, so it's
yeah,
that synth stuff. Um, and so that it's like these big like sort of pseudo orchestral chords, right? So like it's an eight voice FM synth. So we're not doing orchestra here, but we're trying to do like the closest facsimile thereof.
yeah,
Um, so that anyway, that tune starts out with these kind of big chords, and so that was the sort of competitional impetus for that one, and then I built around that. So it
yeah,
kind of depends, but I'd say for the most part, the bass line would definitely be the starting point. The pit in the first game, well, it had this very busy synthesizer ostinato
mm-hmm.
that starts it, but then that kind of moves into the background as the bass line kind of like takes over,
Yeah.
and then it just becomes bass and melody kind of intertwined with. propulsive drums.
I was going to say, yeah, because there's one of those songs. It's where I tend to listen to these as albums, right? So sometimes the song names and areas get mixed up. Temple Gate, I think, was the one that you mentioned there. It might be the Cavern. Is it the one that starts with this really, really crazy drum fill? This. Do you know that one? That's from the first game, and it's really You used the word propulsive there. That's the word for it. Um,
That's the pit. That's the
that's the pit.
pit.
Yeah. Did you play drums?
Not really. I mean, there was a point in late 80s when we had our like our Fish of Destiny band set up in the basement of the house that we were living in, and often I would jump on drums, and so I learned how to like do
Yeah.
a backbeat and do a funk groove, and nothing even remotely serious, but I could like hold down a groove, and so we would fool around, but I haven't done that in years.
But you programmed. You I mean you programmed. You played everything on your at least up until a certain point. All music is you. Is that correct? So you
On
programmed the drums and stuff
On Mortal
on
Kombat.
Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
Yeah, basically up through like Mortal Kombat 5, Deadly
Deadly Alliance.
Alliance.
Yeah.
I wrote all but like two or three tunes in that.
Okay.
And so at that point we're in console, like big consoles, and it's like it doesn't make sense for one person to do the whole game because that's how we did it before.
Yeah.
So that's the one where it's like we have to spread out the work. And then Deception was a great example of like we had a whole department working on it. You know,
Yeah.
someone handling speech, someone handling sound effects, a couple people handling music. So that was a much better model for producing because the games like explode, the amount of content exploded after MK4.
Of course. Yeah. With the crypt and the story mode and everything.
Well, also being on a home console with,
Oh. Of course.
you
In
know,
terms of popularity and
you have
yes. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much more you have so much more memory to work with.
Were you involved with the translation of the music onto the console ports?
No.
You nothing to do with that, no. Did you have any thoughts on that? I mean, did you have any of the any concerns is not the right word, but any thoughts about the music that you had created essentially being transformed in that way to, I suppose some people might say, inferior. But personally, the Genesis Mega Drive version of the Mortal Kombat 1 soundtrack has always been my favorite. There's just something about the way that music sounds with those
Hmm.
more basic synths. I love the way it sounds. But is that something that you ever had any thoughts about at all?
I didn't hear much of it, and
Hmm.
what I did hear didn't really sound like what I had done, so I
Yeah.
wasn't really sure what happened. We did give them recordings, and I think we might have even given them those typewritten, the typewritten or edited scores that we did, because again, the very first game, that's how that was done. After that, it was different because we had changed to the data compression system, so there was no more typing out notes and things like that.
Yeah.
You were just making music, sort of real music in a studio with instruments and synths and that kind of thing. But before that, again, it was just like typing out notes in for your Yamaha 8 voice chip.
The big jump was between Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 when you guys started
Yeah,
using, was it DCS? Was that what it was called?
that's correct.
Yes. So at that stage, did you feel like you had more freedom, less limitations, anything like that in terms of like how did that manifest? All of a sudden,
Well,
you've got
yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that I really liked about the original system, you got 8 voices and it's an FM synth, so that's what you've got to play with. And yeah, we did have an 8-bit DAC, a D-to-A converter where you could do an 8-bit sampled drum. You know, you could save like you could store like a kick drum and a snare and maybe a tom.
Mhm.
Some people would put a cymbal in there,
Yeah,
but that means like cymbals take a long time to
decay.
decay, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of use up all your memory if you
Hmm.
want to use a cymbal. So we got around that by, I'll just make an FM cymbal, which is obviously not acceptable, but it's like a trade-off you have to make.
Yeah, I get you.
So where were we on that?
The expanse of what you could do with the DCS for Mortal Kombat 2.
Right. So what was interesting about the Yamaha system, again, 8 voice FM and a 8-bit, we call it the one-arm drummer because like you play one drum sound at a time,
Hmm.
is that it was like, here's your sandbox, try to make the coolest thing you can out of that. So I had a real good time um, taking on that challenge and trying to make something that was cool.
Hmm.
And so that was always fun. Um, Now it's great to go to the data compression era where it's like I can put any sound in the game. I can do anything I want.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you have this universe of choices
Yeah.
that sometimes makes it difficult. And
Like,
and just
yeah.
like in a mundane way, it's like I've got all these synthesizers that all have thousands and thousands of sounds. You spend a lot of time just like playing a sound, playing a sound, playing a
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah.
That's not fun. I don't like that. So yeah, obviously, you spend a lot of time, you build up a library of go-to sounds that, serve your purposes. So I did that, of course. Um, which also, you can get into ruts of being like, yeah, I always use those same sounds and blah blah blah. But so that's it's basically two different approaches. And, obviously I don't think I would ever want to, after having DCS, it's not like I would ever want to go back.
Yeah.
But there was an element of that earlier system that, as I described, was like fun and challenging to try to get something out of, these very kind of primitive tools, or maybe not necessarily primitive, but not always cooperative tools, I guess you would say.
I suppose the challenge of that would have been maybe that you knew your challenge was to get the best out of the primitive system, and you knew that it was possible to get the best out of it because of its limitations, as opposed to the more expansive version where best doesn't exist because it's in almost infinite kind of
Yeah. And that
possibilities.
bar is very high, and it's gotten higher and higher, over time as well, obviously, like now you're in the realm of like all recorded music.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, that's the bar. And so it's a lot harder to hit that bar than the other bar.
I guess so. When did you get involved with the non-musical aspect of sound design? You were doing that pre Mortal Kombat as well, were you, in terms of like sound effects and voices and that sort of thing?
Well, in the beginning, when I started, and but for about 10 years, it was mostly the case that a sound designer would own a game.
Yeah.
In rare cases, because of workloads and schedules, we would say, okay, well, for example, Bride of Pinbot, I did only the music on that game, and other people did the sound effects and voices.
Okay.
So, but that's actually, I feel like in those days, that was kind of an exception. Um,
And so you would have worked with Steve. Then you mentioned Steve Ritchie before Mortal
yeah,
Kombat.
yeah.
How did he get cast, so to speak, as Shao Kahn and as the announcer? Was it just a case of he was amongst your peers? He was the one that seemed the most suitable for it, or would there have been anything further than that in terms of actual casting?
So in those days, we almost never brought in outside people
Hmm.
to be voice actors. That was a very rare thing, and maybe only happened, maybe when we started doing more film tie-ins, or
Yeah.
licensed film properties, say Adam's Family, not a film. Well, I guess that, yeah, it was based on the film. Things like that.
Yeah.
Steve Ritchie,
Yes, I'm
the
sorry.
reason we picked him is because he was kind of a go-to for like evil voice guy, and then you add some effects and pitch shift,
Yeah.
and he sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
When we got him as Shao Kahn and the announcer, that was a good. I don't think he was in the first one, but he was in the second one.
It was Ed in the first one, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was listening because I have a copy here. Where is it? Somewhere. Mortal Kombat Trilogy has all of the sound. There's all the vocal effects at the end of the CD, so you can hear him essentially in the highest quality without the music or anything
Oh, cool.
underneath. But he rolls his R's on everything, which I'd never noticed before, and it's just such an evil touch to it.
Yeah.
So yes, in terms of your vocal performance, obviously what you're most famous for, I guess, is the little pixelated dude in the
Oh, that guy.
bottom
Yeah,
right
Toasty.
corner of the screen. Yeah.
Hmm.
Were you ever recognized? Did anyone ever come up
Yeah,
to you in the
like
street,
once or
like
like once or twice, once or
yeah,
twice. Like literally I was in a grocery store and someone came up to me.
yeah,
And then another strange one was my daughter went to she was in probably junior high or high school, went to the hospital to for a procedure,
hmm,
and the guy who checked her in, I don't know how, he like saw her last name and like maybe asked her or someone's like,
yeah.
"Is your dad Dan Forden?" So that happened, and then I actually had a conversation with him. He was just a fan, wanted to talk to me. So he just happened to work, at the hospital.
Interesting. Yeah, I would say there'd be enough people out
But
there that
but
would,
not much.
yeah, no, not a lot. Well, it's because your face was so small. So,
Right.
what was the qualification for getting a crispy. This is the one I can't remember because there was
I have no
Toasty.
idea.
Yeah, I because I
You'd
think
have to ask Ed that, and he probably wouldn't remember.
yeah. So then, in terms of characters, then did you play any particular characters? It was more, or was it more to do with like grunts and roars and that sort of guttural stuff?
Right. So in the beginning, we didn't have enough memory to have like, okay, Dan's gonna play Kano, Ed's gonna play Scorpion,
Yeah.
whatever. So basically we had maybe three male voices, and I think in the first one we only needed one female voice. Going forward, maybe we'd had two. I don't think it was until like Deception where it's like we're gonna have a unique voice for every character,
Hmm.
just because memory wise and sort of workload wise.
Yes, I
So
understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
later on when we started, like probably in the MK4 era, and we started doing. Do you remember the arcade MK4 endings that were kind of laughable?
Yes, with great
Yeah.
fondness, I
So
remember them. But yes, they were
yeah,
laughable.
they're really fun to look back on,
Yeah.
but then we did versions of those for the Dreamcast or the Jaguar or something like that
Yeah.
that were really I thought, the guys did a great job putting it together, and then I kind of was able to score those as a real movie with background score and effects and voice, just doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so that was a big step up for us and a lot of fun to do.
As you moved towards the end of the decade, I found anyway that your music became less. What's the best way to put it? Maybe less hooky and more almost like you're aiming for mood and tone. The first thing that
Texture. Yeah.
texture, yeah, it's very very apparent on Mythologies Sub Zero, and then Mortal Kombat 4 is about half and half, I think. Of see, the interesting thing, Dan, I suppose, is that your compositions were for backgrounds rather than characters. In terms
Mhm.
of you didn't compose a sort of cold piece of music for Sub Zero's theme. It was more to do with you would compose a spooky piece of music for the graveyard. But am I right in saying that? I mean, was that something that you were moving towards, trying to get more interested in the drama of the orchestration and almost like a live ambience rather than tunes that I could drive my wife crazy by whistling all week?
Well, for sure with MK4, because I'd done, with MK1, 2, and 3, kind of had somewhat of a DNA.
Mm-hmm.
MK3 was a little bit different because you had some kind of outlier tunes in a way, like the street and I forget it's called the bridge or what, but
Yeah.
it's like there's a big band tune in there basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'd say like even so, I'd say 1, 2, and 3 are kind of a piece.
Yeah.
And then MK4 is like, I just want to try some different things. I feel like kind of like reused stuff too much in the first three. So
Mm-hmm.
let's try some different things. I got some different sounds and she tried to see what I could make out of those. So yeah, more texture, mood as opposed to actual melody.
Yeah. That's the word I was grasping for a few minutes ago, which would have been should have known that one. That's an easy one. And then as you move into the PS2, that becomes, I think, even more prevalent as well. I mean, those games are soundtracked more, if almost in. I don't necessarily want to use the word cinematic, but they're less they're less melody driven. But they're
That's
brilliant.
definitely the idea, I think.
Yeah.
At least maybe I don't know if I was thinking cinematic, but to have just again, it's more like trying to paint a background in a way with sound
Mm-hmm.
that gives the appropriate sort of emotional context and impetus for the stuff that's going on. I mean, that's kind of been my approach mostly.
It's brilliant. It's all very percussive as well as
Mhm.
the drumming and the percussion elements really become very prominent in those soundtracks, which appeals to me definitely, and almost more ethnic instrumentation and stuff. In a certain way, it expands outwards in terms of the recognizable elements of the early Mortal Kombat sound. It's like you said that that Asian instrumentation. I actually think that you get much more confident with that as you go on, and that
Mhm.
confidence comes with not thinking, well, let's do a cool theme for this stage, this stage, this stage. But it's all brilliant. I love the music from the first three games as well. But I think as I've got older, I've started to spend more time just sticking, say, the Deadly Lions soundtrack on in the background when I'm working or something like that. It's very very good. It sets the mood for, I don't know, just wanting to beat people up until they explode, really, while they're at work. But
Well, that is the game.
that's the game. Yeah. Um,
Just a note is on Deadly Alliance, Vince Pontarelli contributed a tune, and Rich Carl, I think, contributed two. So those are names that you would see
yeah.
in the credits for, Deadly Alliance, and then a bunch of MK games after that as well.
Would it have been round about that time that you were that you did? Did you do Kart Fury Championship Racing? Did you do all the music for that? I think there was maybe two credit songs that you didn't do, but you were the lead composer for that game.
Yes. Yeah. So I think the songs that I didn't do were from this band that one of the artists was in. They did some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's what showed. I don't remember the name. But yeah, Matt Booty was the guy who ran that game, and he's now, I believe, head of Microsoft Game Studios.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was actually the CEO of Midway for a brief period, and his job at that time was to shut down Midway. So
Oh,
not
yeah.
great, great fun for him. But
No, of course.
he came from the sound department. He was a colleague before he became everyone's boss.
Yeah.
But it's a great guy. That was in late 90s,
Okay. Yeah.
right? That would have been in like or
Well,
early
it's a
2000s.
PS2 game, I think, actually. So yeah, maybe early or maybe 2000, 2001. So
Yeah.
that was definitely between some of the Mortal Kombat. Would that have been your last credit as sort of sole composer then before you started to
Well, I came back in house as we were starting Deception.
hmm
So that might have been.
yeah,
It also might have been Blitz 2002 was also in the mix
that's
there.
right. Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly, but close enough probably.
What about the Mortal Kombat 9, Dan? Did you? I mean, I suppose most of the music in that would have been versions of your original compositions, but did you put those together? Make sort
Yeah.
of yeah.
That was a lot of fun, kind of revisiting stuff and making it better or different. I had a lot of fun with like the Living Forest,
Yeah.
just kind of making a whole new section for it, that kind of thing. Just trying to make it, similar but very different.
Living Forest is brilliant. Living Forest is, if I got this right, it's in 11:4. Because it kind of goes one, two,
13. I
three.
think it's
Is
13.
it 13? Yeah.
I call it 13/8, I think is what I called it.
Yes, yes, yeah, that would be right. Yeah, because there's a couple of your tunes that sometimes I find myself, this is just maybe the drummer's curse, but I find myself just trying to count along to them and getting completely lost. But again, that endeared me towards your music because I was like, video
Hmm.
game music doesn't need to be this. You don't need to be dropping, quarters or whatever way you would describe that. But yeah, Living Forest rules. And the music for Mortal Kombat 9, it like you said, it's so cool as a fan to hear um not covers but like just reworked versions of music that you're intensely familiar with, and something that I've always really liked about Mortal Kombat, just as if I refer to you guys and NetherRealm as Mortal Kombat for the sake of this point, like Trilogy was probably the first time that you looked backwards and thought, what can we give fans, as something that they'll find cool and they can celebrate. And you basically took as many characters you could get onto one disc and as many pieces of music and the hidden endings with the reels of all the different fatalities and everything. Mortal Kombat 9 was similar to an extent in that there were elements of nostalgia that were packaged up in that it kind of focused on the first few games, but it brought so much new to it, obviously with the X-ray and the story mode and all of the extra content that's in that game. And then the Legacy collection that came out last year, again, it's a collection of old games, but all of the new material that was created for the interviews, all of the different ports of the games. Mortal Kombat is really, really good to its fans, and anytime it's almost like cynic proof, because you can't point the finger and say, oh, well, this is just repackaged games. There's so much extra there. And I think like as early back as Trilogy must have been about 1996, as early back as that, you guys were always very conscious of giving fans something that they would appreciate. So yeah. Yep.
I think a touchstone for Ed has always been let's give the fans as much stuff as we possibly can. I
hmm
mean, I don't know if he's ever said that line specifically, but it's clear from the output that's been an intention over the years.
yeah. um it's terrific and it's very much appreciated. What about the film, Dan, the 1995 film? Would you ever been interested in film composition yourself? And was there ever a discussion for any of the Midway guys to get involved with that in any creative capacity, or is it a case whenever an IP like Mortal Kombat is licensed out to say a New Line, do you kind of sign everything over, and do they just take over everything?
They pretty much took over everything, but Ed and John definitely had their ear, and they would listen to what stuff that they said. Um, and I had some conversations because there were some sounds that they needed, basically because Ed and John said, it'd be nice if they could throw some of the sounds from the game in,
Yeah.
in sort of iconic moments. And so I was in communication with them at one point. I was like, hey, I'd love to do the soundtrack for this game, but I mean, I understand. I had never done an actual movie soundtrack at that point,
Hmm.
and it's a Hollywood thing, and
Yeah.
so they've got their people, and I think they did just fine with that. I mean, they've got a great collection of tunes on there, and then the underscore. That stuff was really cool.
I think
Um,
I think the soundtrack album. So with the licensed music, it was the first CD that I ever bought.
mhm.
A scandalous price of £17 for a child in
Mm.
1995 over here. With
Oh.
it was an import. It was on TVT. It was an import. It was very expensive, but the score itself was done by George S. Clinton, and
Yeah.
it's great. And I think it doesn't use any of your musical themes or anything like that, but it's very very true to the tone of what your music was. And I think that's a big part of why fans have always held that film in very high regard, because it's as faithful really as it should be to a video game property. They didn't try and Hollywoodize it and take elements that they thought, well, a film would do this, so we'll do this, we'll change this because we're a film. So I've always really enjoyed that movie. Maybe
Hmm.
not the sequel so much, but there's a universality to that opinion as well. Um,
Hmm.
in terms of when you were sort of directing sound but not composing, so say about half of Deception, I think you said, and for Armageddon and some of the newer games as well, is does your role then become a musical director, Dan, or does that role go to say Ed, for example, as the overall director of the game?
Um, it's different for all those games. I was actually not very much involved with Armageddon at that point.
Okay.
Jim Bonney was owned that game. Um, with Deception, yeah, I was the director for that game, and we had multiple people working on it. We had multiple people working on Armageddon. I probably contributed some stuff here and there, but I
Mm-hmm.
was at that point, I was actually the head of the central groups at Midway, which was sort of a central talent pool. Midway at that time had multiple studios all over the world and all these games going on at the same time. And there was an idea that we could have this group of artists, audio artists, animators, concept artists, 3D artists that would be able to deploy on teams as they approached sort of their launch. And so that's what I was doing at that point. From there until the demise of Midway in 2009, 2010.
I get you.
So yeah, I was not involved. I was really not involved at all on MK versus DC. But then Midway went bankrupt. Warner Brothers bought what was left of Midway, basically Mortal Kombat,
Yeah.
and we were in the middle of working on Mortal Kombat 9. And so the amazing thing about Warner Brothers is that they came in and said, "Yeah, Mortal Kombat, that's pretty good," and they bought it for $30 million.
It's a lot of dollars.
No, it's not, because
It's
they
not
made
a
so much
sorry.
money out of it.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money compared to what they got out of it,
Yeah,
because
well, yeah.
again, we had a game that was already halfway through, and it was a proven IP at that
Of
point.
course.
And so they were there at the right time, and they were the only ones that I think had the vision to be like, oh yeah, we'll get that thing.
Yeah.
Because I think Ubisoft, all these other companies had a chance, but they didn't. I don't think they understood what they were passing up.
Yeah.
And so the 10 to 15 years after that, and that's basically up to the present day, has been a really pretty good ride for NetherRealm and Warner Brothers. I think our last one didn't do quite as well, but it's still, pretty important game that comes out every 2 to 4 years.
It's really come back into the mainstream again, Mortal Kombat, since then.
Mhm.
Very, very much part of the popular consciousness. Maybe not without the pitchfork parents that you would have got back in the
Mhm.
1990s. But I was really pleased to see Mortal Kombat being something that people that weren't video game nerds like me were talking about
Mhm.
again. So would you have had? Did you then just let the composers get on with it essentially, or would they have come to you for maybe not advice, but solicitation of musical ideas, or is it just a case of um, on the games that you didn't compose for the newer ones? I mean, you were still involved in NetherRealm post Warner Brothers, weren't you?
Yeah. So basically, I retired last year, so 2025. So, I was there with Warner from the start, and then we put out, MK9, Injustice, MKX, Injustice 2, MK11, MK1, and that's as far as I got. And then we were working on a game, obviously, when I left, but you guys will find out what that is later.
Cool. Okay. Um, did you ever feel constrained as the Mortal Kombat guy?
No,
No.
not even a little bit.
No, I would say it would be really, really cool to be the Mortal Kombat guy, to be honest with you. But and you weren't just the Mortal Kombat guy. I mean, Dan, you were doing music for was pinballs up till about 1999, 2000. Is that right? Um,
98, I think,
yeah,
was
thereabouts.
Revenge from Mars was the last game I worked on, and it was one of the last games that Williams, which was the manufacturer of a lot of
Hmm.
those products, they put out. The last one they did was it was a game based on I think the Phantom Menace or the newest Star Wars game at the time, and the
Hmm.
game sold okay,
Yeah,
but it was disappointing to them because well we got the Star Wars license
yeah.
and it sold okay. It's like, okay, well, that they felt like that's writing on the wall, so they shut down the entire pinball division after that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
and these two last games, Revenge from Mars and the Phantom, I think it was the Phantom Menace Star Wars game. They were Pinball 2000, so with a video screen integrated into the pinball machine
hmm,
that you could actually sort of interact with, like you could shoot the ball on the flipper up a ramp and then it would have an impact on something on the video screen and make an explosion or something like that.
yeah.
So you should check it out someday. You can find you I'm sure you can find one of those somewhere.
But it would have seemed that that was the sort of the next. It would have maybe been presumed that that was going to be the evolution into the next sort of phase of pinball, and it just didn't.
No,
Are we blaming the Phantom Menace for killing that off? Then essentially, the Phantom Menace gets a kick in again.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, because like no one, I don't think anyone has really gone back to that kind of technology. I mean,
Yeah.
I, I only, you know, vaguely know what's going on in pinball these days. I mean, I'm in touch with a lot of people that still do work on them.
Yeah.
I'm just not really, I don't have my finger on the pulse of the games coming out, but I don't think there's video screens in those games. Now, as far as like something that is actually like a that creates a gameplay element by virtue of the fact that you can create art and animation and stuff that you can actually interact with the pinball. I mean, now they've got much more elaborate like video screens on the back, in the back glass, right? Like
Yeah.
got full motion video, I think at this point. Uh, but they still that sort of gimmick of Pinball 2000, I'm not sure anyone's tried to do that
Mm.
since then.
Could be a nostalgic resurgence yet. There's an awful lot of people, a lot of stuff that's coming back. CRT televisions are starting to get very popular for people that are into their retro gaming.
Yeah, this was a CRT, by the way.
Yeah.
And oh, that game had this may interest you. That game, Revenge from Mars,
Hmm.
had a video mode where Robo Abe Lincoln took on um, the boss alien in like a Mortal Kombat style fight. So of course I wrote some Mortal Kombat appropriate music for that, and we had like all the trappings to make it, oh, it's Mortal Kombat in a pinball machine with Robo Abe Lincoln versus the alien.
Robo Abe Lincoln appearing in a game like that is almost a precursor to the licensed characters appearing in the more recent Mortal Kombat games because like they've got everybody in there from
I
Terminator
know.
to Freddy Krueger and everything. But I think maybe that
Yeah.
was the first instance that something like that could maybe happen. Except it was maybe historically insensitive in some way. But
I don't know who
yeah,
came up with Robo Lincoln, but I thought it was genius.
it's a great
It's
idea.
like, who would have thought? But I'm here for it.
So I kind of hinted earlier on that I was going to ask something like this, and you kind of covered this to an extent, but I want to ask you in a more, you know, uh, definitive way. Is would you say there's a musical discipline or scale or some sort of framework that sort of defines your work? By which I mean, is there a tangible explanation for why it sounds the way that it does? You know, something that you are always mindful of.
Um, I guess if anything, it's like it's like very like nuts and bolts of music intervals and notes and chords and scales, that things I gravitate towards
Mm-hmm.
based on the kinds of music that I started to gravitate towards growing up. A lot
Yeah,
of the prog rock stuff, it's like different, it's like the tonalities and the chord structures are different than what you normally hear in most pop music or popular music.
of course.
But it's not like any mystery. It's just, it's like there's specific tonalities that I gravitate towards, and so those are the ones that I tend to use. And like, you could talk about, I like to do things with bass lines where I play around with things that move to like a minor third and then a semitone and then a major third, and then just kind of I can like fool around with that with those basically those intervals and always come up with something that I like, and
Yeah,
then can harmonize melodies across that stuff. So I mean that's I don't know if that's long-winded, but it's just like I would what I'm thinking of is like specific harmonic tonality based things that I tend to like and do is maybe the best answer that I can give for that.
it's a great answer. No, that's exactly what I was fishing for because I'm self-taught, which means that I can listen and I can play, but I can't necessarily explain what I do. And I think as I get older and start to record more with other people, as a friend and I have been putting something together over the past few years, I am finding myself having to be able to try and explain music in those terms because it's how you communicate musically. But it did occur to me that there's definitely a sensibility to your work that probably could be defined in a theoretical sense. With the move to Mortal Kombat 3, with the setting changing to Earthrealm, did you find that that was an opportunity to modernize the sound, if you know what I mean, in terms of it being still sort of evocative of the kung fu music and that Asian Gothic that you described? It's a lot more urban, the music in Mortal Kombat 3. Is that something that you were conscious of at the time?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the first tunes. Well, so let's see, for MK3. Yeah, I think the Subway was maybe one of the first tunes I did for that. And so that's not very Asian Gothic.
Yeah,
Although again, I think it has that diminished scale harmonized at the fifth thing going on in the
yeah,
melody, right? That goes over the ostinato. So it's like that's, bag of tricks, right? Um, the bridge, which has like sort of a big band tune.
mm-hmm.
But again, it's like the same tonality,
It is.
even though it
It's
sort of has
there.
it's got a big band orchestration, but the tonality is very much, diminished scale, you know, those kinds of harmonies.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, about half that game was more urban, and then there's like the street, which was basically a hip, like sort of hip hop version of the original first Mortal Kombat tune,
yes,
the one that I described at the beginning.
yes. The courtyard.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and then there's the church as well, which is you talk about Gothic earlier.
Right,
It's just full on Gothic. That's an
right,
organ
right.
piece, you know. Yeah, a lot of very interesting stuff going on in that game. Probably my favorite as well. I think Dan Mortal Kombat 3. There's an interesting thing with I don't know if this is the case all over the world, but the music in Mortal Kombat trilogy, all the tracks from 3 are slowed down and they're pitched down as well. Do you know anything about that, or
I don't.
it's
Does that sound any good?
it sounds. Here's the thing. So for years, that's how I heard that music. I didn't know there was an alternative. I had Mortal Kombat trilogy before I had any of the other
Wow.
versions of 3, and indeed the soundtrack for 3. But it is. It's. I think it might be something to do with the PAL NTSC conversion or something like that. So all of
Mhm.
the MK2 tunes that are in that game sound the way they're supposed to, but the 3 stuff is all slowed down. So the first time I played 3, as in like a standalone copy of 3, I thought there was something wrong with it because everything was really, really fast. So it's got to the stage where I can kind of take both of them now. It takes my brain a little second to adjust. It's like, are you at the lower pitch or the higher pitch? But um,
Wow, I had no idea that that happened. I wonder if that's supposed to happen. I just don't know. I don't
the,
think it was supposed to happen.
probably not. I've seen discussion with other because I thought maybe I had a faulty, disc or something like that. But
hmm
there's other people have talked about that online. So um, I suppose
Again,
it.
that's the port, right? That's the console version, not the arcade
Well,
version.
was there an arcade version of Trilogy, or was it? I had thought it was console only, but maybe I'm wrong.
it's going back a long ways, and I was never like really in the mix on what was
Yeah.
done with what, but I know that we called it Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and maybe that's trilogy,
No,
or maybe that's a different thing.
it is Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 was 3 but with an expanded roster and a couple of new stages, and then Trilogy was Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 plus the characters from 1 and 2 and the stages from 1 and 2, and there was like an aggression bar that was added in as well, so
Hmm.
it was a separate game, but it was still the core of it, I suppose, was 3. um
But that must have been just for console,
I think it
because I don't know
was.
if we did. I don't think we did that as an arcade. I don't know if we would have been able to do it with because trying to fit 3 games in there. I just don't think it was.
Yeah, size wise I think they
But
had to.
but there was. I feel like there was an arcade version of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and maybe that's
There was
the
there
close.
was
Well, that's the closest thing to trilogy because it clearly does not have the first 2 games in it.
Yes. I think there was a version of it that was abandoned as well, with WaveNet coding. That's just a phrase that I picked up from watching those documentaries, but it's on the Legacy collection as well. So
WaveNet was like a proprietary arcade networking system,
yes, okay,
and I don't know if we ever really pushed that with MK, but I don't know if you ever played or heard about the Grid. That's what drove the Grid. The
yeah,
Grid is the game that came out maybe right after MK4, and it was basically the Mortal Kombat team. You should try to find one of these. I think you'd like it. It's a third person shooter game. Think of the movie Running Man,
yeah,
like it's a game show, and all these contestants are in there with weapons and trying to like stay alive and get prizes and stuff. And there's like a studio audience and an MC, and it's like super over the top goofy. Um, it's like one of the most some of the most fun I've had working on a game. I did, we did all the as with most of the arcade games. It's like I did the music, sound effects, and all the voices too, or recorded all the voices too.
yeah. I'll definitely check
But
that out. Yeah,
super fun. But that game, like you could network up to 6 of them, 6 big arcade cabinets. You could, if you had the space,
yeah.
you could put those in a room. In fact, at NetherRealm, in the video arcade at NetherRealm, there's 4 of them,
Okay,
and people love playing those. I mean, it still holds up.
that sounds great. Yeah. So this that was planned for Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and for some reason didn't come off. You
Yeah,
know.
I'm pretty fuzzy on like how that happened. But it was used for the networking of the grid, but that was like 5 years later probably.
Yeah.
And we may have used it for something else. I just don't remember. Maybe we were using it for racing games too. I just wasn't really involved in any of the racing games that we were doing, so I'm not sure.
Were you listening to other video game composers, Dan?
Well, Trent Reznor on
Accounts?
Quake,
Yeah.
and all the Doom and Quake stuff. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
That's most of what I played. Like for me, those are my favorite games by a long shot. And I'm not really a video gamer, honestly. I didn't play all that many, video games over the years. Um, but I definitely spent a lot of like a way too much time on Doom and Quake, like all, Doom 1, 2, and 3 and Quake 1, 2, and 3. And then Quake Live Arena where it went online. It's like, oh my God, I can kill people everywhere in the world. It's great.
Yeah, fandom of Doom seems to be a recurring theme across the conversations I've had with people for this channel so far, which is interesting. If I mean, if you weren't playing games that much, would you consider yourself a video game composer back in the day, or did you just see yourself as a composer?
Wow.
Is there a difference?
I don't know. I
Yeah,
guess um I don't think I'd even consider myself a video game composer, even though I did that. I was like a video game sound guy
yeah,
because I was responsible for not just the music. I mean, that's like the sort of the sexy part or the most fun part, at least
yeah.
for me. I felt like I was always better at making music than making sound effects.
Hmm.
And then that was driven home to me when, so this was around the time, so right after Midway went bankrupt and we're in the middle of working on MK9. And I had already left the sound department, but then because we went bankrupt, I went back to the sound department. And then I'm working with Rich Carl and this guy, Michael Casely, who we hired as a sound effects guy. That's all he did. He had no interest in writing music, as
Okay.
far as I know, for games. But the sounds that he came up with, I was like, oh my God, what are you channeling?
Yeah.
Because it's like it was just out of the realm of what I could ever imagine that I could do as a sound
Yeah.
designer. And so then it's like, okay, you should do the sound effects. I'll work on music and other stuff. I also at that point started dipping the toes into implementation of the sounds, and so we've got kind of I guess best practices of how we implement sounds in Mortal Kombat for the console games. We want to like keep the panning integrity of everything that's happening.
Yeah.
And especially when like projectiles are moving across the screen, we want that to be reflected. And so with the tools that we have, we're able to do that. And so I over the last 15 years of the whole like from when Warner Brothers started, I started taking over more and more of that, and that became a much bigger part of my job than even doing the music. And so over the course of like MK9 through one,
Yeah.
I was doing less and less music, and we were contracting more and more music, and that was okay with me because it was better. It was a challenge,
Hmm.
because the designers are always coming up with some new thing that a character can do that like breaks stuff that we've thought we could. And so it was always interesting to try to support with the crazy new ideas that they'd come up with, and make sure that it still had the integrity that we required as far as like the sounds have to play in the right place at the right time for the right amount of time at the right volume. So it's
Yeah.
like that was like the job. And so like an example of that is I think it was MK11. Um, what's her name? Ashra.
Hmm.
She could like put sins on you, and they'd like there's like this like effect, this twirling effect that would be around you. And there could be three of them. And so depending on how many sins you had on you, the sound would change, and then they would die out, or they would get knocked off if she hit you with all these different things could happen.
Yeah.
But then like, you can't like have, so all the sins are gone. You can't have the sins all gone and still hear the sound. So
Yeah.
there was a lot. It took me a while to get that one right, but that's just an example of the kind of challenge I was working with to try to support the game designers when they come up with these cool moves that we need to make the audio work properly for.
It sounds like really interesting work too, because it's the kind of job where it may not be noticed that you've done it well. You won't
No,
be
it
noticed.
shouldn't.
So
It
you'll
shouldn't.
only notice if it's done
Yeah.
badly. So
Yeah.
it's not to say
Right.
it's a thankless task, but it's like you'll have this satisfaction knowing that you've done it well. No one else will ever know. In,
Yeah.
in in terms of like sound design, did that move from in the early days that your sounds would have essentially been synthesized? Did you move then into Foley as the technology allowed for it later on, and were you just recording digitally in terms of real sounds?
Yeah, sure. Record real sounds, lots of sound effects CDs as well. And then
Yeah,
also, well, it's coming up with like synths, just taking a synth patch and doing something with that and then manipulating that. I mean, there's all kinds of like, what sound designers do now, at least at NetherRealm, if they're looking at doing it's a very well thought out and deliberate process. It's like, okay, you've got to do this particular character, say it's Liu Kang, and hear a bunch of his moves, and so now we've seen what his sound his particle effects look like. So now we can come up with what the sound designers do is they'll come up with a palette of sound.
hmm,
It doesn't have to match anything, but it has to have a character that makes sense for the visuals that you're seeing. And then they start mixing and sculpting and bit crushing and delaying and doing all these like magical tricks to the sound to create the very specific gesture or particles or sound that
yeah.
fits with that thing. And the guys that over the years that have worked there. I'm gonna try to name them. See, I hope I don't leave anyone off, but
Yeah,
but
go
like
for it.
Michael Casely, Matt Grimm, um, Eric Wiedemeyer, Steven Shapler, Rich Carl, obviously he was like running the show at that point. Um, Sean Gallagher, um, George Huffnagel, Matt Swanson. Oh, I forgot one name, Austin Shannon. That
See,
guy, great sound designer. There you go. Really, all these guys have just been tearing it up, like
yeah,
and like pushing the envelope on what like the coolest sounds that they can make. And I swear, I feel like when we do those special moves, like the X-rays or the
Yeah.
fatal blows or whatever you want to call them, the stuff that they come up with, I put that up against any like, you know, triple A movie sound effect that you've seen. I mean, they're so I feel like they're just so tightly constructed, and the EQ is just like so tweaked perfectly for what the thing is. It just blows me away. And I'm glad that we had those people to do that because I couldn't do
I
that.
mean, there's no time when playing those games have I ever thought, no, that's not what it would sound like if you pinned someone to the ground and cut them in half with a spinning hat. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just completely true and authentic to what it should sound like, and it's also just really satisfying. And you know, when I think of the sound design for Mortal Kombat, the word that comes to mind is splutch. It's just this fantastic splutchy sound, particularly whenever
Hmm.
the brutalities came into play. And because there was something about like the fatalities were really amusing because they were inventive and they were cartoony in some ways and they were gory, but like just beating a guy or a girl up until they just burst, all of the sound that went with that was just
Hmm.
so primal and brutal. I suppose that's where the word came from. It, but yeah,
Are
this
you talking about the most recent ones or the ones
no,
from way back?
I mean back in the '90s. So even back in the '90s, the sound design was on point. It just it made great use of the available hardware. But the newer games are like you say, you could stack that up against any film because sometimes when you're watching films, even AAA films, like you suggest, you'll hear sounds and you're like, I've heard that before. That's a stock sound. You know what I mean? Every ringing telephone sounds the same. Every bike that goes past the screen, and as a sound guy, you may have noticed this, but it's driven me
Yeah,
crazy
sure.
forever.
You definitely hear some things over and over
Yeah.
again.
But the sounds in Mortal Kombat, they're all bespoke. They're all unique and sickening in the appropriate measure. So it's really,
Yeah,
really.
no, great. It's a great combination of sort of the visceral thing that you kind of expect to hear, but
Hmm.
then there's this sort of this aura around it of magic and mystique.
Hmm.
And it just blows me away the way that these guys would craft these sounds. It fit so perfectly and sounded so good and had such a powerful impact.
Did you ever worry for the sanity of the people that were coming up with the believable sound effects for all of these horrific, violent acts?
No, but maybe some of the artists that worked on Fatalities. I know that there was I think this was during COVID. I'll probably get the story wrong, but like I think it'll be close enough. Basically, there was an artist who felt like I think they quit maybe because all they were doing was going through like horribly gory images of gore and death and carnage
Yeah.
for, to create the realistic or, I guess realistic artwork for those sequences. So I feel bad that that person had to, was impacted that way.
Yeah.
Like, everyone responds differently to stimuli, right? So some people maybe just, they don't even think about it. But I can also see how it's like, wow, this could take a toll on a person.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you worry for the people that like work exclusively in like horror films and stuff, and
Right.
yeah, that
Does that change their, does that change their psyche over, 15, 20 years?
Did you ever pitch any fatalities yourself?
I don't think so.
Do you have a favorite?
But there's so many. And the fact is I probably don't know all of them
Yeah,
because
same.
I was like I was not generally not working on those. I did
Yes,
like the background score for them, but that was just one piece of music that we use kind of for all of them.
of course. Yeah,
Um, um, I do well the one where Kung Lao puts the saw on the ground and then
yeah,
pulls you through. That's pretty solid. And there's an Ermac one where like he levitates you and then like pulls your guts out through your mouth or something like that.
yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
There's one I really like where Jax in three, he turns his arms into blades, and
Oh,
he stood side on, but the way that he turns to look at the camera with a big smiley happy face on him before he did, there's just something about that addressing of the camera. And
is that in
similarly,
MK3?
I think that's three. Yeah, yeah, because he had the in two he just had the gauntlets, whereas in three his arms are completely metal. So, yeah, that's
I gotta
terrific.
say about the sound effects for the brutalities in the older games in MK3, I was not happy with those because I mean it was like this thing we were like kind of bolted on at the end, and
Huh.
I was already pretty much out of memory and time. So we just kind of had to put sort of throw some stuff in. So I would say the brutality sounds, from whatever MKX on
Yeah.
or however those are the ones that I would, because I didn't make those sounds. Those sounds were made by better sound designers than me.
With the brutalities back in the 90s as well, whenever the person would explode, there didn't seem to be any quality control applied to the skeletonization. So there would be like maybe two rib cages, three arms, a couple of skulls and stuff. Which again I always
Yeah,
really appreciated because this is again a series where your head would pop out routinely to I suppose comment on the player's
right,
toastiness. So
right.
but one thing I'm still wondering about is like, are you retired? You retired from NetherRealm, or are you a retired man now? You know.
I guess I'm a retired man now because I
Yeah.
don't work.
Okay.
But doesn't mean I'm just sitting at home.
Oh,
I
of
do
course.
some of that, but
Well,
I'm
that's what.
trying to keep busy, writing music and playing guitar and going to see music and
What kind of stuff are you listening to these days?
um a lot of prog metal, honestly. Do you know Periphery?
Yeah, I've seen Periphery.
Really?
Yeah, I have.
I'd
Yeah.
love to see them.
Yeah, they're
I
amazing.
just saw Snarky Puppy.
Oh yes. Uh huh. I know of them. Yeah.
Oh, they're so good. I've actually so a lot of prog rock, but also a lot of jazz fusion
Mm-hmm.
and all of fun. Like there's, I don't know, I totally missed it, but like bands like Lettuce and the New Master Sounds and all these other sort of more modern instrumental funk groups,
Yes.
love that stuff. Lettuce, do you know Lettuce?
I don't know
Really good.
a particular album or song or anything I should check out.
I would just I think if you listen to any Lettuce, you probably get the idea right away. It's like, okay, this, it's like jazz, funk, instrumental mostly. Sometimes there's singing, and when there is, it's great. I mean, these
Yeah.
guys are phenomenal musicians, so it's just a real treat to see them. And they come around a lot. Um, and local stuff. Actually, one of my favorite bands, probably yeah, my favorite band, District 97.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, check them out. They're like progressive rock, maybe somewhat classical rock. I feel like they've got some Genesis. I feel like Genesis is maybe one of their biggest
Mm-hmm.
influences, at least the main guy or the drummer. But they've got super talented guys, and the female singer, Leslie Hunt, she is fantastic. It's like aggressive, powerful, progressive rock, and she's a phenomenal front woman. So they're great. Um, who else have I seen recently? I was out of town for like over a month, so I hadn't seen much. What do you listen to?
Um. Yeah, prog metal would be a big thing for me as well. I like the extreme stuff, Dan. I like death metal and black metal and that sort of thing. And electronic
Meshuggah?
music as well. Yeah, I love Meshuggah. Yeah,
I saw them a couple years ago. They were so good.
they're very very good. That last album of theirs is astounding. You know,
Animals as Leaders, do you know them?
another great band. Yeah,
Mark,
yeah,
you probably like Matt Gartzka.
yes. Uh huh.
That guy is amazing.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen some of his, like he's like I've seen a bunch of his clips in like Facebook Reels lately.
yes. Uh huh.
And it's just like him in the studio or a live show with animals and you're
Mm-hmm.
just hearing his drum part. And I was like, oh yeah, I totally know what that song is just by the
Yes.
drum part.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
So I've seen them a couple times, well, at least three times. Really big fan of theirs. Pliny, he's more of like jazzy fusion, jazzy progressive rock fusion. I don't know, kind
Yeah.
of hybrid.
I suppose one
Um,
of the big ones for me as a prog metal fan was Dream Theater. Do you ever listen to Dream Theater?
I have listened to Dream Theater, and I'm not sure if I like them that much. There's
Mm-hmm.
something about them. It's like they're like Sticks, but more intense. I
Mm-hmm.
like I like aspects of them, but it's like if I had to pick between them and Haken, I like
Yeah.
Haken. I
I
really like them a
I
lot.
adore Haken. Yeah.
And I saw
Yeah.
they came to Chicago, and I saw them. It was like one of the best shows I've seen to that point.
Yeah. Well, they had a pretty big lineup change a couple of months ago, where I think that maybe was it one of the guitarist and the bass player left. I think so,
Really?
but they've something coming out this year. But yeah, gone from six piece to a four piece overnight. I don't think those guys have been replaced, but Haken are a really
Wow.
really dependable, reliable band. You know.
Mhm.
Um, if
I feel like they've got like every once in a while, it's like, oh, they'd like Gentle Giant.
Yeah,
I can
100%.
totally hear I can totally hear that influence in their stuff.
Yeah, there's a song on the last album as well. I think it's, oh man, I have it right here.
Fauna?
Yeah, on Fauna, it's I think it's Elephants Never Forget.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and yeah,
that's the one. That's the one that has like the
yeah,
Gentle Giant vibe for
that's what you
sure.
like. And so you're a fan of Gentle Giant as well, and Dan, by the sounds of things.
Oh yeah,
What's your
I have
favorite?
I have like I have like most of their albums.
I have all of their albums too.
Probably
Yeah,
Power and the Glory. Probably Power. There's so many great songs scattered throughout their albums, but Power and the Glory has like a concentration of them, I feel like.
very much so. Yeah,
Interview is fantastic.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, they're all fantastic. I mean, I guess Interview, Power and the Glory, um, Freehand. Those are maybe my top three. Three Friends, solid.
yeah. Nice short album. It's about 32 minutes. I think Three Friends is really, you could listen to it nearly twice in an hour. But
Really.
yeah, I love In a Glass House. I think is the one that I've listened to
Yeah, that's a really good
the
one
least.
too.
But every time I listen to it, I think, oh, maybe this is the best one. It's
Right, right.
so much stuff going on there. But
Very interesting.
oh, it's brilliant to talk to somebody about Gentle Giant because they don't seem to come up with the frequency of, when people talk about Genesis and Yes and Rush and a lot of the obvious kind of prog
Hmm.
touchstones, but Gentle Giant are just, when you find someone that loves them, they really love them. So that's cool to hear you say that. I forgot that the whole time we've been sat here, I've had my computer queued up to play a sound,
Yeah,
which I forgot that I did because I wanted to ask you about a very particular sound effect that has
sure.
played on my phone and back in the days on the iTunes on my laptop and on my brother's laptop as well, hundreds of times. And I can't place it. You might not be able to remember where this is from as well, but it says somewhere online that this is you. So I'm going to cue this up here. Give me 2 seconds, and
Mhm.
hopefully you should be able to hear this. Okay?
Oh,
Did that
That's
come?
me.
That's you. Okay.
Yeah.
What can you recall again how that's triggered in the game, or what are you expressing in that moment?
That is, I think that happens when like after you get knocked into the dead pool and you're a skeleton floating there, then you hear that, and that what happens? That's one of them. I don't know how where else it is. That's just one of those
Hmm.
stupid things that coworkers say to each other in response to whatever. It's basically like, oh man, oh.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, this kind of ties into something else that I wanted to say was what I think appealed to literally millions of people. I guess was the personality of Mortal Kombat, and indeed in the personality in 1992, what you're getting is the personality of four guys: your sensibilities, Vogel's sensibilities, Boone's sensibilities, Tobias's sensibilities, um, and I just want to take a chance to say, as that perhaps more than any other composer or performer, I've often felt like your music was written for me, and like it taps directly into whatever part of my brain defines taste in music. It just goes straight to what I like to hear, and I kind of missed out on Mortal Kombat 4 at the time. I might have been put off by the 3D thing, but for whatever reason, it wasn't until these, like I was saying, these Enjoy the Ride records came out a few years
Hmm.
ago. So I got my hands on a copy of this soundtrack for 4, and it was like hearing an album. It was the same experience for me as an album that I had somehow missed by a band that I loved, and listening to that and finding everything that I have always admired about your music is all there. And then in preparing for this conversation, I listened to a lot of stuff that I hadn't heard before. Re-listened to some of the Mortal Kombat soundtracks and checked out the obviously the Cheer Accident stuff, the Kart Fury Championship Racing, and it's there in all of it. And I just, again, I guess what I'm saying is what appeals to me is the suggestion of your personality that comes through in your music. It obviously explains the appeal of those games to an extent to
Hmm.
a great many people worldwide in terms of the way that they look, they sound, they feel to play. It was such a small team that made that, and the team for two would have been about 7 or 8. Would that be right? Um,
Yeah, I think we had, I don't know if we added Steve Baran. I know Tony Goski definitely joined at that point. I
yeah,
don't remember who else.
I think you're right about
There's
Steve.
probably
Yeah.
more artists. Yeah, it's probably more artists.
And then by the time you left, what size would the team of? I mean, the last game was MK1. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you want to look at it. You had probably 150 people in the studio working on it, but then you had people all over the world that were contracted by some of those people to create content for the game.
Yeah, yeah.
So, a ton of audio we did. Um, we contracted out a lot of audio, like both composition and well, actually composition and then mixing of the in-game cinematics. which is considerable. It's like a
Of
two
course.
and a half hour, 3 hour movie or something like that. So there's a lot of work there. Tons and tons of art and animation work, coding work. I mean, like it takes so many people to make a game these days.
Of course, yeah. But I mean, most of those guys are still like obviously Ed is still running the ship. Is Tony still involved?
Tony's not there anymore now.
No. John Vogel I think was there until
Vogel, he's still there. Yeah.
yeah Vogel's still there and Steve Barron I think maybe
Steve's
as
still
well.
there. Yep. Yep.
I mean that's rare. To
Yeah.
get people to go from such the literally small in terms of the scale of the amount of people and still driven by the same says a
Yeah.
lot
Well, it's it.
says a lot about friendship too, and even with
Yeah.
John not being there anymore, that you guys all seem to still be close, and it was never because of a fallout. He just wanted to do something else, which
Yeah.
it's very heartening to hear about that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, it's a good group of people and obviously there's disagreements and people have personality conflicts sometimes, but I gotta say for the most part, at least from where where I've been sitting, it's been um, a great product to be involved with and a great team to be involved with. And thing that I said when we had a little like cake and a moment in the kitchen when everyone's like, okay, Dan's leaving. It's like the thing that I said was like, it's nothing like working with a group of people that are really intelligent, really motivated, and really creative to try to make something, and then also the problem solving that goes along with it.
Yeah,
That's like the best part. That's like the best part of it. It wasn't necessarily like whether I was writing music or making sound effects or implementing sound. It's really just like the collaboration at what I think is a pretty high level. We're trying to do pretty hard things, and we've got a lot of people that are motivated and intelligent and capable, and you get a pretty cool product when you get a little bunch of people that are sort of rowing in the same direction.
yeah. Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Plus, I mean, what we consider creativity generally as like I'll speak as the audience of computer games, films, music, whatever. Creativity is the art, but what you're describing there about a group of people working together, collaborating to problem solve, that's creativity too. So even when you're not working on making something sound the right way, creating a piece of music for mood, or like you described earlier, making sure things pan in the right way or that they're located properly in the sound stage, if that's the right word for it. You're
Right.
still it's always creative in terms of that problem solving, which just sounds like a great gig.
Yeah, no, it was a great gig. Like I said, I'm very grateful that I was able to be part of it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, I was just going to mention, I did do a soundtrack for a movie. It's called Psycho Magnet. I don't know if you could ever find it anywhere, but basically, Mike Ocean,
Hmm.
who was an artist on like Hyperdrive and Cart Fury, I think. Um, he and his wife, that he left Midway a long time ago. He runs a family business in Iowa, but he's like very creative. And he and his wife, as like a hobby,
Yeah.
they make these like survival horror comedy movies,
Okay.
not survival horror, comedy horror. Yeah, it's like comedy horror.
Okay.
Um, and so there was a point at which like, hey, I'd really like to do a film. And so Matt Booty, who I mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
and Mike Ocean worked for Matt on his games, said, well, Mike's working on a movie, so I got in touch with him, and so I went ahead and did the soundtrack for their movie. I don't know if you can find it anywhere, but it was a really great experience to work on that, and I felt pretty good about the results. Um,
Um, what? How did you find the difference then? Did you working on character themes or what? How was it different to your previous work? This is really really interesting.
um, so I had a couple. So I saw the movie, and then I started thinking about what I would expect to hear. Maybe if someone else did it, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just kind of work from first principles. It's like, what would I hear? What do I hear here in this context? So a couple like melodic motifs, not even a theme, just like melodic. Really, yeah, it wasn't really themes at all, but it might be like a sound. Like I
Hmm.
would use a sound or a type of sound to indicate, oh, that's referring to this character, maybe. Um, Specific intervals were used, but really it was just like, okay, here's a scene, and how can I make the music make sense to support the scene? I mean, it was a while ago now, so I don't remember specifically, but it's really kind of like the way I do the music for the game. It's like very seat of the pants, just
Hmm.
what makes sense here. I'm gonna try something and just start going with it. Um, and then yeah, they seemed to like what I was doing. So and then yeah, he took it around to like sort of local horror film festivals, and it got a pretty good response.
Um,
It's just fun to do.
Psycho Magnet, you said. When did that come out? I'm gonna have a hunt for this. And if indeed if anyone in the comments below
Mhm.
has a lead on this, let us know. But yeah, when was that released?
That would have to be probably anywhere between like 2012 and 15, right
Hmm.
around there.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I could probably get you an exact, no, a more exact date. If I look at in my pictures, maybe that's going back a ways. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's out there somewhere.
Do you have the music from it still?
I have some. What I did was I put together like a 10-minute montage
Hmm.
that's like couple scenes,
Sizzle.
um, a couple scenes and like sound effects maybe pulled out or, just so the music was a little bit more prominent.
Yeah. What kind of films are you into, Dan?
I don't know. I don't actually watch a lot of movies,
That's interesting.
to be honest.
Yeah.
It's like they're too long for me. It's like I need the shorter format because like, by the time it's like it's to be after dinner, it's like, oh, I'm getting ready for go to sleep.
Yeah. Yes, yes, I'm getting to that stage myself. So.
I don't think I'm very sophisticated movie wise. I usually like most movies that I see pretty well.
Hmm.
I think The Terminator is one of my that's I think it's a fantastic movie, the original one. I
It's
love that
it's a
movie.
perfect movie.
Um,
I think it's perfect. I wouldn't
right,
change a second of it. Yeah.
right. District 9,
Yes.
that blew me away. That was
Yeah.
so good. Um,
I always thought it was
the
kind of a shame that that didn't propel Neil Blomkamp to um, like a sustained career as a sort of reliable sci-fi movie
right, because the
director.
stuff he did after that just didn't hold up as well.
That's right. Yeah, but Chappie I think was the second film. If I've got that
I didn't
right.
see that one, but there was
Um,
like Elysium. I think he did that too.
yes. He did.
And I thought that was like kind of cool, but it was also kind of something about it bugged me. I don't know. I felt like District 9 really like
Yeah.
such gruesome, horrible things, but like
Yeah.
told in a really compelling way.
Yeah. Heart.
Yeah,
Great.
right.
Yeah. Great movie.
Um,
Did I ask you what you thought about the Mortal Kombat film?
you didn't.
I didn't. I would like to know what you think about any of them. I mean, it's going to be
All
four
right.
as
So,
of next week. There's going to be four available. Like so.
yeah. So the very first one, I think I liked pretty well. It was very exciting because they took the whole studio to a movie theater and we saw the premiere.
Yeah.
And the design team, they took us out to California. We went to the premiere, the LA premiere, and then went to the after party. So we met like Christopher Lambert and Robin Shue
Oh,
and
cool.
the
Yeah.
other people from the first movie. So that was pretty cool. So I saw that movie and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But then I saw it again and it's like second time, it's like, oh, it's not as good as I thought it was. And then Armageddon, I was like, oh. And then the one after that, oh God, I had so many well, I had problems with like the whole how stupid Kano was being about like getting his powers. I
Yeah.
thought that was terrible. I thought that was terrible writing. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm not a huge fan of that movie. There are elements of it that I like, but the idea that they kind of put like a sort of like a player stand-in character as the
Yeah,
main character of the
yeah,
film,
that
it's
too.
just use the story
Right.
that people have loved for like 25, 30 years at this stage. So, but apparently the new film seems to be being touted as something much more faithful to the games. I think
Hmm.
they've learned from
Maybe,
the
yeah.
mistake on that.
Was it the same people doing it, or is it a new group?
Yeah, the original two films. Original two films was a
There's
separate
New
group
Line.
from the new two. It's all made
Okay.
by New Line, but Paul W. S. Anderson directed the original. Like, I don't know if he directed the second one. I'm not sure if he did.
Well, he's a he's a decorated director, isn't he?
There's two. There's Paul W. S. Anderson, and then there's Paul
Uh-huh.
Thomas Anderson, who directed
Oh, okay.
that was a great film from One Battle After Another that came out last year. So
Right. No,
they're kind of
he's
at different ends of the respectability
okay.
scales, but
Okay.
I really admire both of them. I think
Okay.
probably the most iconic Mortal Kombat sound is the guy screaming Mortal Kombat from the Mortal Monday
Hmm.
commercial. Were you involved in this in the sound of that at all, or no?
No.
Was outsourced as well.
Yeah, that was great though. I mean, that really, I think that really sums up Mortal Kombat also. They did a great job with that.
It's terrific. Yeah, it's really good. Oh, just yeah, everything about even the music that comes in and the intercutting between the footage from the game and the people
Hmm.
swarming past in the streets. It's very much of a piece with the tone of the identity of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Well, listen, Dan, you've been very very generous with your time. I mean, is there anything else you want to say or talk about or you know
What do you think about Nate Smith?
who is
You
Nate
know Nate
Smith?
Smith?
No, who's Nate Smith?
Oh, check him out.
Yeah,
He's so good. He's do you know Wolfpack? Fearless Flyers?
I don't know.
They're like funk acts.
Yes.
Nate Smith is like plays with one of those. I think Fearless Flyers, but it's very similar to Wolfpack.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was thinking of a different.
Wolfpack.
Yes, yeah.
So it's that vein. But Nate Smith also has like check out some of his recent albums that he's done. He's jazz, but man, he is something else. Great composer, really interesting compositions and just presentation.
I will.
And he's a
Yeah.
fantastic drummer.
Without trivializing it, getting music recommendations from Dan Toasty Forden is something that I've probably dreamt about, to be honest with you. So yeah, anything you say, I will take with yeah, absolute certainty. I will trust your endorsement.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to shout out to Corn too. I love Corn. You know the band
I
Corn.
do know them.
I know a lot of people. I know that's like a third rail for some people, but I'm all in with Corn. I love Corn.
Right up until present day. Yeah.
Yeah, did they do something lately
They
that
did. They
should
released.
change my mind?
No, no, not that. But just they released a single. I think it was last week or the week before. Did you hear that?
No, I don't think I did.
I think they've done it for it's like a tie-in with Diablo, maybe the new Diablo game, something like that. But
Oh, really?
yeah, there's a video and everything, so you should check that out. Yeah, I did. I listened to Korn a lot when I was younger. They were one of the sort of entry requirements for getting into metal in the UK.
Yeah,
Around about
Corn,
99 2000.
Deftones.
Of course, yeah, Deftones.
Love Deftones.
Yeah,
I didn't even really know about them until like 2 or 3 years ago. So I don't know where I was, but they've been around forever, and and I really dig their stuff, like beginning to end.
I was the same. I was always aware of them, but it took me until about 4 or 5 years ago to properly spend time with them as well. But like Ohms and Diamond Eyes
Hmm.
in particular, I
Hmm.
don't think you get music like popular music that's heavier than Deftones. I think it is just
Yeah,
sonically crushing.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
really it's brilliant music. So
I saw Gojira warm up for them. Wow,
yes,
what a show!
yeah, I'm seeing them in a couple of months. They're supporting Metallica over here.
Oh,
Gojira are
awesome.
yeah a terrific another brilliant band.
Yeah,
And to have gone from very like small scene death metal starting out, and now they're they played it was it the Olympics I think last year, or I think
that
it
did
was
you
the
see that thing that they
yeah
did?
uh-huh
That blew me away. I mean, the guy's like hanging off the side of the castle, tied
yeah
onto it so he doesn't fall off. I mean, it was
yeah
so how cool is that?
oh it's outstanding.
So last year, two bucket list items in one. I went
Hmm.
to Lollapalooza and I saw Corn at Lollapalooza. So
First time at
that kind of
Lollapalooza, yeah.
first time both, yeah.
Yeah, what's the does Lollapalooza have like a what do they call it, like a USP in terms of is it a touring thing? Lollapalooza tours, doesn't it? It's like a touring festival.
I thought it was, but it seems like it only happens in Chicago every year.
It's just the one.
Yeah.
Who's headlining?
This year?
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
that
no, the
year?
year that you went, yeah.
It was Corn
What
and
was?
Olivia Rodrigo at the same time.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah,
so I was over with Corn. I think Olivia Rodrigo had the bigger crowd probably.
yeah.
I saw T-Pain too. I think he might have had a bigger crowd too. I mean, it was crazy how much.
Is he a? It's a rapper, isn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that name in a long time. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know from, I just know about him. He does like the auto tune all the time.
Yes.
But great performer. It was so funny because it was so hot and he's like, you're sitting in a in an air-conditioned meeting room coming up with this costume design and now it's like 90 degrees in the heat. And he's like, didn't think of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just it's like I'm burning up. Anyway, I should probably go.
No,
Well,
that's
we could probably chat for a while, but maybe we'll talk again.
Dan, I would absolutely love to talk to you again. We'll arrange something. I have ideas for this channel that I think may be new to YouTube, and there's something that might fit for you. So
Cool.
yeah, I'll give you a call about it sometime maybe.
All right, man.
All right. Well, listen, Dan,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and yeah, thanks again for today and for I guess maybe 30 years. It's yeah, this has been my absolute pleasure.
Well, thanks very much for being a fan because people like you that love the game, the game wouldn't have lasted this long without fans. So it's like it's a symbiotic thing at this point.
Of course. Yeah. Well, listen, it's been easy, so yeah,
All right.
no problem.
You take care.
See you later. Good luck.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.